Cultivating the Buddhist Heart, How to Find Peace and Fulfillment in a Changing World, by Nichiko Niwano. Chapter 5, Tilling the Field of the Heart. The Role of a Buddhist. Tilling the field of the heart is the basis of Buddhism and a key element of the age of life. It is this that brings about peace of mind and peace in the world. The phrase, the age of the heart, first came into use back when Japan was beginning its period of rapid economic growth. It was intended to emphasize the value of the spirit, warning against the notion that satisfying the material needs would lead to happiness. I think people felt the urge to focus on spiritual affluence when they realized that, although they had, if anything, an overabundance of material things, something was missing, that they could not gain true satisfaction this way. The spirit has always been important to people, whether or not they are materially blessed. Enriching the heart is the basis of life for us Buddhists. On reflection, however, we realize that while the dimension of the spirit is important for a fulfilling life, physical as well as mental and emotional health is important, and that enriching our living environment is also necessary. Buddhism teaches that body and mind are one. The two are inextricably linked. Buddhism does not hold that the mind is superior to the body. Buddhism sees the importance of the mind as extending to its vessel, the body, and also to the environment. Therefore, I prefer to emphasize the immutable importance of what I call the age of life, the importance of living in a way that enhances healthy living, which includes such concepts as the age of the heart and the importance of body and mind. In 1998, the 60th anniversary of Risshō Kōsei Kai, I announced the overall objective of each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart. This reflects the vow of the Buddha and the spirit of Risshō Kōsei Kai at the time of its founding. The state of Japan and the world at the end of the 20th century has brought home to us the importance of tilling the field of the heart. In 1996, I visited Israel, where I discussed the Middle East peace process with Christian, Jewish, and Muslim leaders. The following year, I visited Jordan in February and Bosnia in September, exchanging views on conflict resolution and the peace process with many religious leaders. Over the past several years, I also had many opportunities to meet and engage in dialogue with Japanese religious leaders. All this made me aware of the importance of efforts to prepare a conducive climate and enter into various agreements in order to resolve conflict and build peace. At the same time, I was keenly aware that such measures are not the way to a fundamental solution. That since it is human beings who cause conflict and war, and human beings who build peace, there can be no world peace, no fundamental resolution of conflict, unless and until peace is built in the hearts of individuals. I also felt the great hope placed in Buddhism and Risshō Kōsei Kai. I realize more than ever that Risshō Kōsei Kai exists to work for world peace and true personal happiness. I feel strongly that we who take the Lotus Sutra as our central scripture, as members of a Buddhist organization, are called upon to reveal the essence of Buddhism and demonstrate true Buddhism to the world. In short, our role as members of a Buddhist organization is to till the field of the heart. In other words, to enhance our own lives. This, I believe, will lead not only to world peace, but also to peace of mind and true joie de vivre. That is why tilling the field of the heart is our great goal and the basis of living as members of a Buddhist organization and as Buddhists. Returning to the original spirit. The ancient Chinese calendrical cycle of 10 stems and 12 branches takes 60 years to complete. The 60th year, when the cycle returns to its starting point, thus signifies both a return to the beginner spirit and a fresh start. From the standpoint of a Buddhist, it means returning to the fundamentals of Buddhism and endeavoring anew for self-improvement. Upon Risshō Kōsei Kai's 60th anniversary, then, it was important that we return to the starting point of the organization and, like newborn babies, make a fresh start, engaging anew in endeavor. Most important was that each and every one of us bring the Buddha's teachings alive in our daily lives and till the field of the heart. In the first 60 years, we devoted ourselves to the objective of dedicating ourselves to the salvation of each and every person. The vow of Risshō Kōsei Kai at the time of its founding and the vow of the Buddha. Tilling the field of the heart sounds a bit different, but there is no real difference in the underlying vow, since tilling the field of the heart means being saved. Each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart strongly connotes looking within ourselves, and, even more strongly, first undergoing a great transformation. Dedicating ourselves to the salvation of each and every person expresses the vow to till the field of the heart through the Bodhisattva practice, and each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart expresses the vow to devote ourselves to the Bodhisattva practice by tilling the field of the heart. While the emphasis differs slightly, fundamentally the two objectives are the same. Both involve benefiting oneself and benefiting others. Both are equally necessary. Tilling the field of the heart is important in every age. It is the basis of the Buddhist teachings. Indeed, I believe it is the basis of all religions. When we turn our eyes to the basis of all religions instead of being preoccupied with a particular religion, an expansive world opens up before us. Looking within. When we think through the vow of the Buddha and the spirit of Risshō Kōsei Kai at the time of its founding, we can glean a variety of meanings from the objective of each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart. Merely being born physically is not enough to make us human. Only when we awaken to the realm of eternal life and are reborn to the realm of the spirit are we truly human. Rebirth as a true human being, this is the realm to which religion aspires. Tilling the field of the heart is indispensable to this rebirth. In other words, to be born again as a human being, to be reborn as a true human being through transformation, is the vow and the goal of each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart. As I have already suggested, each and every one of us tilling the field of the heart means looking within before looking at the external world, the conditions around one. This is the important meaning of tilling the field of the heart. Looking deep within is one of the Buddhist teachings and is basic to the way in which Buddhism builds peace in society and generates individual peace of mind. Religion, especially Buddhism, emphasizes looking deep within oneself over looking outward and reforming society. By looking within, we become aware of the value of life, and that in turn leads to a great transformation, giving us a sense of the oneness of all living things. Buddhism seeks the fundamental solution to human suffering through each and every person's looking within and undergoing a change of heart. That is why the Buddha considered meditation important. Changing external conditions is one prerequisite for bringing about peace, but it does not lead to a fundamental solution to the problem of suffering. It is by looking within oneself and recognizing the truth and the Dharma that the problem of suffering and all other problems are solved and peace is attained. Behind the founder's contributions to world peace through interfaith cooperation and his many initiatives in this area lay the fundamental wish that each and every person establish inner peace. I believe it was because he looked deep within himself that he gained the goodwill of religious leaders around the world and was able to expand Risshō Kōsei Kai's scope of activity so greatly. In terms of conventional wisdom, looking within oneself is not particularly empowering, but in actuality, it is the most empowering thing one can do, and is the way to lead people to peace and true happiness. Tilling the field of the heart has a great impact on those around one. It is taught, believing oneself, one brings others to believe. The all-important first step is to establish one's own faith firmly, take refuge in the Buddha, and recognize the truth and the Dharma. If the field of the heart is well tilled, we can enjoy lives that are always replete with joy. Instead of criticizing others, let us first recognize the truth and the Dharma, look within, and joyfully walk the way of the Buddha. This is the basis of everything. The fertile field of the heart. The agricultural philosopher Ninomiya Santoku wrote, "If you till the field of the heart, tilling the wilderness is easy." In other words, tilling the wilderness is an arduous task, but if you can till the field of the heart, you will have no trouble tilling the wilderness. Buddhism includes the concept of the field of merits, also called the field of blessings. The field of merits is the field that generates virtues, the greatest field of merits being the Buddha. The threefold Lotus Sutra likens the Buddha to the blessing field for gods and men, and the great field of blessings for all living beings. An old Japanese maxim runs, cultivate virtues in the field of merits. We too are fields that generate merits. As the Sutra of Innumerable Meaning says, pouring abundantly the supreme Mahayana, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas dip all the good roots of living beings in it, scatter the seeds of goodness over the field of merits, and make all put forth the sprout of Buddhahood. This passage teaches the order in which the Buddhas awakened the aspiration for Buddhahood in us. This field of merit is none other than the field of the heart within everyone. Each of us has a distinctive inner landscape. Of course, it also shares features with others' inner landscapes, but since we are all discrete beings, our fields of the heart put forth a wide variety of sprouts: compassion, warmth, flexibility, respect for life, and so on. When a field is tilled, its soil is loosened and it yields a rich harvest. In the same way, as we till the field of the heart, our stiff and unyielding self-centeredness is loosened. We are released from suffering, and we are reborn as compassionate people imbued with respect for life. The more we till the field of the heart, the richer the harvest we reap. If we give the field water and light, it will yield an abundant harvest. The key is the way we till it. The field of the heart holds boundless potential. Originally, it is rich and fertile. Plowing the soil and sowing the seed. I find the image conveyed by the following story from Shakyamuni's 45 years of teaching especially moving. It appears in many scriptures, including the Sutta Nipata, the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Samyukta Agama, grouped discourses. This version below represents my amalgamation. Shakyamuni was staying in a Brahmin village in the kingdom of Magadha. The Brahmin, Kasidvardvaja, a large landholder, had his workers yoke oxen to 500 plows in preparation for plowing and sowing, and was distributing food for the morning meal. Shakyamuni went there and stood quietly to one side. Seeing him, Kasidvardvaja said accusingly, "Shramana, we plow the soil, sow seed, and thus obtain our food. Why don't you plow your own field and obtain your own food?" Shakyamuni replied quietly, "Brahmin, I too plow the soil, sow seed, and obtain food." Kasidvardvaja, not understanding what he meant, retorted, "Shramana, we have never seen you plowing. Where is your plow? Where is your ox? Please explain what you mean by plowing in a way that we can understand." Shakyamuni replied with the following verse: "Faith is the seed, penance is the rain, wisdom is my yoke and plow, modesty is the pole, mind is the yoke tie, mindfulness is my plowshare and goad. I am guarded in body and guarded in speech, restrained in my belly in respect to food. I make truth my weeding hook and meekness my unyoking. Energy is my beast of burden, bearing me to rest from exertion. It goes without turning back to where, having gone, one does not grieve. Thus is the plowing of mine plowed. It has the death-free as its fruit. Having plowed this plowing, one is freed from all misery." Moved by Shakyamuni's words, Kasidvardvaja offered him rice gruel boiled in milk, but Shakyamuni refused it, saying, "It is not the custom of an enlightened one to receive food in exchange for reciting verses." He ordered the Brahmin to dispose of it in water where no fish, insects, or other living things dwelt. Kasidvardvaja did so, upon which the rice gruel hissed and gave off steam. Seeing this, he pledged himself to Shakyamuni on the spot, and begged to be allowed to become a disciple. Eventually, he gained the enlightenment of an arhat. Thus, Shakyamuni taught the importance of tilling the field of the heart. The image of Shakyamuni conveyed here, and his dialogue with Kasidvardvaja, teach us a great deal. Of course, we learn that Shakyamuni taught the importance of constantly tilling the field of the heart, but we also learn what tilling the field of the heart actually means and how to go about it. Each one of us, from our own standpoint, should think about how best to till our own field of the heart and make this our objective. I myself see the objective of each and every one tilling the field of the heart as comprising 5 elements: mindfulness, thanksgiving, mildness, warmth, and the joy of faith. They all seem different, but fundamentally they are linked and together make up an invaluable mindset. Mindfulness. Through mindfulness, the essence of religion, we gaze within ourselves and gaze at the source of life. This provides the occasion for tilling the field of the heart. Religion lays great value on mindfulness, on looking deep within oneself, so much so that we can even equate the two. Religion is found where there is mindfulness. Where there is no mindfulness, there is no religion. Thus, the essence of religion is mindfulness. It follows, of course, that the essence of Buddhism is mindfulness. As we know, Shakyamuni gained enlightenment through deep contemplation, that is, mindfulness. Self-reflection is the inward examination of one's daily actions, one by one. Mindfulness is scrutiny of not only one's individual actions, but one's entire inner landscape, oneself as a whole. It means looking at oneself as a whole human being, not just at this or that aspect of oneself. As living things, human beings are constantly changing. They are not fixed entities. To look at the totality of this ever-changing self is to look at the very self. It is to view the human condition in its entirety. In other words, it is to gaze at the living, moving source of life, the true form of life. Shakyamuni said to the Brahmin Kasidvardvaja, "Mindfulness is my plowshare and goad." Plowshare refers to the origin or occasion of something, that which triggers it. Mindfulness, then, provides the occasion for tilling the heart. Mindfulness is possible at any time, any place, in a crowded train on the way to work, in the quiet moments before sleep. Morning and evening sutra recitation is a good time for mindfulness, and there are many other times and places. If we aspire to constant mindfulness, we can touch the true form of life, the source of life. Touching the absolute. Gazing upon one's inner landscape, at one's very self, one arrives at something absolute, what the eminent Buddhist educator Shuichi Maeda calls the impulse of life. Labor and childbirth, he points out, do not arise of a woman's own volition. They are natural workings, and the newborn baby's suckling is not a conscious action, it is an impulse or drive. Likewise, we grow sleepy naturally. It is not something we do deliberately. Hunger, too, is something that occurs naturally, regardless of our will. What causes these phenomena? The same kind of natural working can be seen in regard to emotions. When we are attracted to the opposite sex, it is not because we deliberately set out to be attracted. It just happens. Attraction comes first. We attach reasons to it later. Again, we do not get angry because we decide we are going to. Anger seizes us unawares. Thus, the varied emotions we feel are not subject to our power. They emerge from somewhere beyond ourselves. They are touched off by contact with an irresistible force. Thought is supposedly a conscious act, but it too is triggered by an irresistible force. If, when we think of something, we are asked why we did so, all we can say is, "I don't know, I just did." We can even say that something impelled us to think as we did, that something must have triggered the thought. It is said that human beings do not think about things that are not necessary to their own lives, which means that we think because it is essential to life. Although we may believe we are doing all this of our own volition, each and every case depends on the workings of an absolute force beyond ourselves. In every aspect of daily life, we are in touch with something beyond humanity. Through mindfulness, we realize that our daily life, our very existence, is informed by an irresistible force, a force beyond humanity. Human beings, with their finite lives, are in touch with infinite life. Individual selves are in touch with an absolute force that transcends the individual. It is through mindfulness that we become aware of the absolute force within ourselves. We realize that the source of our actions, emotions, and thoughts lies not within ourselves, but in this absolute force. We are powerless to sway it, nor can we create or destroy it at our whim. This, indeed, is the true form of life. We do not live by our own power. Another aspect of mindfulness is that through it we discover that we are sustained by absolute life, that we are enveloped by absolute life and live in its embrace. The intuitive realization that we are given life alerts us to the importance of respect for life. In the exchange between Shakyamuni and Kasibardhavaja, the Brahmin started out by saying, in effect, that he lived through his own efforts. But Shakyamuni said that the Brahmin was given life. Shakyamuni's whole life was infused by this spirit. When we pride ourselves on making a living by creating something through our own labor, we are prone to accuse others of doing nothing. Shakyamuni demonstrated, however, that we do not live by our own power, but are given life. This is a key feature of Buddhism. Society takes the narrow view that our lives and achievements depend on our own efforts. Effort is important to life, but the Buddha's teaching is much wider and deeper. Through it, we realize the error of priding ourselves on living by our own power, and it awakens us to the fact that our lives are sustained by many other people and by the Buddha. Shakyamuni's verse prompted Kasibardhavaja to pledge himself to the Buddha on the spot, and eventually he became an arhat. He was transformed by Shakyamuni's words. The virtue of humility. When we gaze within, we see that we contain both good and evil. It is important to honestly acknowledge this. We are guilty of robbing other living things of life in order to sustain our own lives, but we are also capable of sustaining the lives of other beings. Moreover, within ourselves we find both self-centered greed and the altruistic impulse to improve society. All this indicates our contradictory nature. When we realize this, we feel distress and sorrow, but we also become aware of the mystery of humanity. If we bear all this in mind, we will avoid both self-denigration and arrogance. When we are in conflict with someone, if we honestly examine ourselves, we can never say flatly that we are absolutely right. Recognizing our flaws gives us humility, one of the most important virtues. A humble person always lives in accordance with the truth and the Dharma. The Lotus Sutra and many other sutras begin with the words, "Thus have I heard." Following the Buddha's teachings begins with listening to them with an open mind. Hearing is said to be the most inner-directed of the senses. Sometimes, when we hear another's views, we refuse to accept those that do not agree with us. But the kind of hearing I am talking about here is very different from merely listening to the opinions of seniors and so on. The true meaning of hearing is to efface oneself and fully take in what one hears, even if one cannot agree with it. This kind of hearing means setting aside, if only momentarily, the idea that one is right and looking within oneself in the light of another's teachings. Speaking to the Brahmin Kasibardhavaja, the Buddha said, "Modesty is the pole." These days, modesty, in the sense of shame, seems to be a dying word, but traditionally, modesty, or shame, has been a highly valued virtue in Japan. Seen in Buddhist terms, shame is the gateway to repentance. When one gazes at oneself and becomes aware of the truth and the Dharma, one realizes how insignificant one is in the face of the infinite. This gives rise to shame and to repentance. Conceit is severed, and one has no choice but to become humble. One sees the arrogance of one's way of living and is ashamed. One is compelled to bow down before the Absolute. The Japanese expression, ome ome to ikiru, means to live, ikiru, in a shameless or brazen manner, ome ome to. It implies a sense of shame for being oblivious to that which we should be ashamed of. Reflection on episodes of daily life can trigger a sense of shame, but that is a superficial kind of shame. The essence of shame, that which we should be most ashamed of, is lack of awe and thanksgiving toward the Absolute. True awareness of what we should feel ashamed of springs from self-examination. Constant mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we gaze at our own relative self and the absolute force that transcends it. Even if we gaze within and clearly know our own inner landscape through mindfulness, however, there is nothing we can do about it. We cannot improve it, however much we may want to. Mindfulness only lets us know ourselves as we are, only shows us the true form of life of finite human beings. We can observe, know, and realize this, but we cannot change it, nor can we do anything about the workings of the absolute force. It is the working of nature, the working of a force transcending humanity. We do not change through self-examination. We can only look into ourselves. All we can do through mindfulness is gaze deep within and touch the true form of life. Mindfulness makes clear our complexity and mystery, giving rise to contradiction, confusion, and anguish. It reveals the inevitability of contradiction, confusion, and anguish, and makes us realize that this is the human condition. I imagine that some will wonder whether self-examination can serve as a vigorous power for life, but I believe that mindfulness is the most important source of power. Shakyamuni is the greatest exemplar of a person who has come face to face with the human contradiction and touched the Absolute through mindfulness. It was through mindfulness that he awakened to the truth and the Dharma. Knowing this is enough to stop us from dismissing mindfulness as having no power and generating no power. As I have already noted, if we gaze deep within through mindfulness, we become aware of our contradictory nature, made up as it is of both good and evil, both self-centered greed and the impulse to altruism, and we feel confused and anguished. This process is important. If we avoid looking frankly at our contradictory nature and shrink from confusion and anguish, we cannot achieve mindfulness. It is when we confront our contradictions, taste the depths of anguish, and then surmount them that we are reborn. Human beings are interesting. When we experience anguish over our contradictions, we are moved by the complexity of humanity. Being moved in this way is the essence of what makes human beings interesting, and it's a springboard for a new phase of life. Surmounting our contradictions makes us aware of the rich potential of humanity, that amalgam of good and evil, self-centeredness and altruism. We realize the boundless potential of humanity. We are infused with the courage to live, and life's boundless potential unfolds before us. This is the power generated by mindfulness. Mindfulness dissipates anger and confrontation, gives rise to mildness, and leads to harmony. Mindfulness makes us aware of the mystery and value of life. It makes us thankful for everything. Mindfulness frees us from ricocheting between joy and sorrow and lets us remain calm and collected at all times. We can lead lives that are truly worthwhile, laughing and crying with others, feeling compassion for them, and dedicating ourselves to their well-being. Finally, mindfulness leads to a firm belief in the truth and the Dharma. This is how we encounter the Buddha. None of this can be achieved by our own power. It is a realm that opens up naturally through what we might call the gift of nature or the gift of the Buddha, the working of the great life force. Counting our blessings. Let us live every day with thanksgiving, counting whatever we see and come across as a blessing. We are all blessed with life. The ability to accept every day as a blessing and live it with thanksgiving is, I believe, the greatest happiness. I would like to see us live with the focus on how we can maintain this frame of mind. Our greatest blessing is having been born into this world, having been given life as human beings. Life consists of both joy and sorrow, both pleasure and pain. It is because we have been given life that we can taste all this. And it is because human life has been bestowed on us that we can encounter the precious teaching of the Buddha. How blessed are we! To live in thanks for this is what gives our life significance. It is the leitmotif of life as a human being. True joy de vivre and happiness come from thanksgiving for our own lives. Conversely, if we forget to give thanks for life, there can be no joy de vivre, no happiness. At bottom, our lives are linked to the lives of all other beings, and while our lives are finite, they are sustained by an infinite life and thus partake of eternal life. What is more, each and every life is unique. Each is distinctive and irreplaceable. Let us live in such a way that we never forget to give thanks for this wondrous life. This blessed life is irreplaceable life. Everything is a blessing. When we realize what a blessing our lives are, and the impulse of thanksgiving arises within us, we become able to accept everything that occurs around us as a blessing. Joy and pleasure, of course, but also pain and sorrow become blessings. Even those who speak to us harshly and those with whom we are in conflict are seen as blessings. All people are perceived as precious. Everything is a blessing. Being able to wake up in the morning as usual, being able to say good morning to our families, seeing our children set off for school, being able to work. The natural phenomena of rain and sunshine are a blessing, as is the sight of flowering plants and of animals romping. Being healthy is a blessing, and if we fall ill, we realize the joy and blessing of health, and thus can give thanks for illness too. We take the occurrences of daily life for granted, but when we think things through, we see that nothing could be more marvelous. What a blessing the commonplace is. Daily life means, I think, living with thanks for everything, seeing each commonplace element of everyday life as a blessing and a wonder. To nurture this sensibility is to till the field of the heart. I hope, too, that we will firmly realize that gratitude arises from recognition of transience. Seeing the unseen. Every Japanese person knows the word arigatai, rendered here most often as blessing. Arigatai harbors an important meaning. Its literal meaning is difficult to have or be. Originally, arigatai signifies how very difficult it is for each and everything to be precisely as it is. We need to clarify, what is arigatai? What is a blessing? I have spoken again and again about the importance of recognizing transience. This means realizing what is a blessing by identifying what causes us to feel thankful. The Buddha teaches that having received life as human beings, having come into contact with the Buddha Dharma, and all the commonplace things that we take for granted are occasions for thanks. To accept this fully and feel thankful for everything is to till the field of the heart. We say thank you, arigato in Japanese, when someone has been kind to us or shown us goodwill. But being thankful does not apply only to what suits our convenience. It means being able to say thank you for that which is inconvenient or uncomfortable as well. It means being thankful for the workings of the fountainhead of all life, the absolute force that sustains all living things. The majestic tree that withstands wind and rain has long, stout roots stretching deep underground. Those roots, invisible to us, support the great tree. The saying, the tip of the iceberg, means that what we see is only a tiny bit of the whole. The bulk of the iceberg is hidden beneath the surface, and frigid though the water is, under the iceberg are hosts of fish and plankton. What this tells us is that valuable things dwell where we cannot perceive them directly. Our being alive here and now is due to the working of a great life force invisible to us, and we are sustained by its power. In short, we live because we are given life. What a blessing this is! Cultivating the discernment to sense the blessed working of the unseen transforms our life. Thanksgiving, the foundation of life. Whether we are deeply thankful for having received the precious gift of life and having been born as human beings determines whether we know happiness. The verse in the Dhammapada that reads, "Difficult it is being born a human, difficult it is being alive now for those whose death is inevitable," teaches that being able to give thanks for one's own life is the greatest happiness of having attained life in this world. The key to joie de vivre is a gratitude for having been given life in this world. If we have a strongly developed sense of gratitude, life becomes firm and solid, and we can live lives full of joy, never wavering. Gratitude for having received life as a human being. When we become aware of this, the foundation of humanity, we can give thanks for everything, even hardship, accepting it with thanks as a time of testing and then rising to the challenge. When we become aware of the blessing and wonder of having received life as human beings, a sense of the value of our own lives wells up within us. We are compelled to feel the same way about all life. When we become aware of the blessing of our own lives, we find ourselves unable to fight others. Instead, we realize that harmony with others is our true desire and the desire of all people. To become aware of and live with gratitude for the blessings and wonder of life, and of having been born a human being, is the foundation of human life. Herein lies an important aspect of the objective of tilling the field of the heart. In praise of mildness, recognition of the law of transience opens the way to selflessness and reveals the realm of tranquility. Japan is said to have spent the last half-century in peace. Whether this has been peace in the true sense, however, is questionable. Looking around the world, we can hardly say that it has been peaceful. To find true peace, all people need to create peace within themselves, desiring peace and striving to attain it. No amount of external power can bring about peace or fundamentally wipe out conflict. True peace is created only when individuals cultivate mildness within themselves. As with the world and society, trouble, strife, and confrontation between individuals can only be fundamentally resolved when they bring mildness to their dealings with each other. The 17-article constitution of the great Japanese statesman Prince Shotoku begins with the famous words, "Harmony is to be valued," which express a basic and universal human desire. The aim of Buddhism, too, is harmony. That harmony is to be valued is the true path for Japan, indeed for all of humanity, was articulated by Prince Shotoku some 1400 years ago. People feel most comfortable, relaxed, and serene when they are in harmony. Replacing harmony with mildness in the passage quoted above, I feel conveys the spirit of Prince Shotoku's words still more clearly. Mildness is to be valued. Yawaragi connotes freedom, flexibility, gentleness, and tranquility. It is the state in which self-centeredness has totally broken down. Recognition of the law of transience opens the way to the realm of tranquility. Leave anger to the other. Shakyamuni's teaching is a teaching of peace. In short, Buddhism equals peace. While it is hard to express what this peace means in just a few words, we can say that where there is violence, there is no peace. Violence takes many forms. Raising one's fist against another is, of course, violence. So is coercing or dominating others. Attempting to manipulate and control others to make them conform to one's own selfish thoughts and desires is violence as well. When others do not do as one wants, one is stirred to anger. This anger is the root cause of violence. If people could control and cut off anger, then violence, and thus conflict and war, would disappear. If anger were tamed and converted into mildness, the realm of peace would emerge. Conversely, until anger disappears from people's inner life, there can be no peace. We need to look within and reflect on whether we can really control and cut off anger towards one another. Anger has a major bearing on everything from family peace to world peace. Article 10 of Prince Shotoku's 17-article constitution has this to say about anger. Let us cease from wrath and refrain from angry looks, nor let us be resentful when others differ from us. For all men have hearts, and each heart has its own leanings. Their right is our wrong, and our right is their wrong. We are not unquestionably sages, nor are they unquestionably fools. Both of us are simply ordinary men. How can anyone lay down a rule by which to distinguish right from wrong? For we are all one with another, wise and foolish, like a ring which has no end. Therefore, although others give way to anger, let us, on the contrary, dread our own faults, and though we alone may be in the right, let us follow the multitude and act like men. What should we do when someone displays anger towards us? Prince Shotoku says, although others give way to anger, let us, on the contrary, dread our own faults. In other words, let us ask ourselves what within ourselves has provoked the other person's anger. If we face someone who is angry with us and acknowledge our own faults, the other's anger will fade away. In most cases, we blame the other person for not understanding our feelings, or not knowing the facts, and we react to anger with anger. But as Prince Shotoku says, both of us are simply ordinary men. Neither of us is perfect. The other person may be wrong in some ways, but so are we. Can we honestly say that we have done nothing to make the other person angry? It is important that we take note of this. It all comes down to whether we look at our own or the other person's faults first. If we reflect on our own errors and apologize for them, the other person's anger will dissipate. Generally, when we are tussling, we do not hit someone who is down. And when we see a helpless opponent, we are driven to reflect on our own behavior. Mutual self-reflection generates mildness, and conflict disappears. What is important is that both parties, instead of assuming that they are absolutely right and totally without fault, reflect on the fact that both of us are simply ordinary men. It is important to realize that we are not perfect, but are ordinary men, in the eyes of God and the Buddha. The realization makes people gentle, brings peace to the world, dispels confrontation, and gives rise to harmony. When we leave anger to the other person, quietly question ourselves about our own flaws, and are mindful, the other person's anger naturally subsides, and the realm of mildness and harmony emerges. A pliant heart and mind. Tilling the field of the heart means developing a pliant mind, what we might call mental freedom. This kind of flexibility allows us to stop being preoccupied with differences between ourselves and others, and to understand our interdependence. Attachment to things is the cause of suffering. When we understand that everything is impermanent and devoid of self, our minds become flexible, and we can become free as attachment falls away. This is the state described in the phrase, Nirvana is eternally tranquil. Buddhism calls the state in which defilements have disappeared, Nirvana. In today's parlance, this is mental freedom. Since the Buddha's wisdom is infinite, we finite beings can never plummet. All we can do is approach the infinite by knowing our shortcomings and being humble and pliant. In a verse in one of the sutras, Shakyamuni says, in effect, gentleness lifts the yoke from the ox. Pliancy leads to gentleness. Lifting the yoke from the tired ox symbolizes releasing the yoke of suffering from human beings. This verse also conveys compassion for the ox. The ox has worked hard all day and must be tired. In the compassion for the ox that leads to removing his yoke, we sense the depth of Shakyamuni's thoughtfulness. The phrase, gentleness lifts the yoke from the ox, conveys empathy with the life of the ox, the life of which we all partake. Without gentleness, we cannot feel compassion for the ox. This warm consideration is important, reminding us that we must not be rigid. We often say, so-and-so is always smiling, what a gentle person. Surely, what makes us say this is not just the fact that he or she wears a gentle expression, but that we sense the person's compassion for others and empathy with diverse forms of life. This is true pliancy, true gentleness. Enjoyment through patience. Patience helps us make our way through the world we live in. Patience leads to a gentle heart and mind. Patience means striving to bear up under persecution and humiliation, suffering and disappointment, not succumbing to anger, but remaining mild and gentle. It also means striving not to give way to arrogance or euphoria when praised by others, or when brimming over with happiness. When we talk about patience, we conjure up an image of gritting our teeth and grimly enduring. But essentially, patience is enjoyable. The religious and moral philosopher Ishida Baigon, the founder of Sekimon Shingaku, a Japanese movement that syncretized the Confucian philosophy of Wang Yangming and native Shinto and Buddhist thought, said that ideally, patience means ceasing to be conscious of enduring or putting up with things, accepting this rather as an entirely natural part of life. Enduring is not meant to evoke a sense of pathos or tragedy. It is meant to be done with good humor and enjoyment. When we awaken to the truth and the Dharma, there is no more grimly enduring with gritted teeth. Chapter 14 of the Lotus Sutra is titled, A Happy Life. Happy connotes not just serenity, but also the forbearance that accepts all things. Enduring with good humor and enjoyment means perceiving all difficulties as trials sent by the Buddha. It means seeing difficulties as vehicles through which the Buddha is trying to teach us something, and dealing with difficulties in the realization that it is precisely these difficulties that enable us to savor the spice of life. In A Happy Life, we read, if a bodhisattva mahasattva abides in a state of patience, is gentle and agreeable, is neither hasty nor overbearing, and his mind is imperturbed, if, moreover, he has no laws by which to act, but sees all things in their reality, nor proceeds along the undivided way, this is termed a bodhisattva mahasattva's sphere of action. When we are able to give thanks for hardship, we have overcome it, and when that happens, a gentler, richer humanity is cultivated. Chapter 10 of the Lotus Sutra, a teacher of the law, says, the robe of the Tathagata is a gentle and forbearing heart. This gentle and forbearing heart, I believe, is the mainstay of a Buddhist. The world never conforms to our wishes. Nevertheless, we struggle to make things go our way, trying to bend others to our will and acquire all that we want. This is the source of the greater part of suffering. If we accept that the world is intrinsically contrary, we will be able to endure inconvenience as something completely natural, rather than growing angry. Caught up in reality, we tend to forget patience. If we can adopt the approach advised by Ishida Baigon, We will no longer need to think in terms of patience, forbearance, and endurance. If we attain that state of mind, this world becomes the land of eternally tranquil light, a place of true joie de vivre. Wisdom is my yoke and plow. The Buddha said, "Wisdom is my yoke and plow." Wisdom is the working of knowledge of the truth and the Dharma, the opening of the eye of the Buddha knowledge, the realization of the law of transience. To say, "Wisdom is my yoke and plow," is to say, realization of the law of transience is my yoke and plow. Wisdom means seeing and accepting things just as they are, things in their reality. When we look with the eye of wisdom, we see that everything around us is in ceaseless flux, and that all things are linked and interdependent. In short, we perceive the workings of the laws of transience and the lack of an abiding self. This is things in their reality. If we are preoccupied with the phenomena that directly impinge on us, we lose sight of their essential nature. Conversely, if we are preoccupied with seeing the essential nature of things, we tend to belittle phenomena. It is important to strike a balance, neither belittling phenomena nor losing sight of the essence of things. Seeing only the surface of things, we alternate between emotional highs and lows. My kids don't listen to a thing I say. My husband thinks of nothing but having a good time. She is totally selfish. Such complaints arise because we are preoccupied with the surface of things. What we need to do is guard against self-centeredness, sensing and considering the other person's feelings. Rather than make up our mind after seeing only one side of things, we need to view things in a multifaceted, holistic, fundamental way. Looking at the big picture is the first step towards acquiring wisdom. If we can see and accept all things just as they are, we realize that we are all given life, and this totally turns our lives around. Instead of constantly complaining, we find ourselves able to give thanks for everything. Seeing things just as they are is extremely difficult. It is important, though, to liberate ourselves from attachment and to develop gentle, pliant, mild minds. This leads naturally to wisdom. True human warmth. Transmitting the Dharma to others is the warmest action in which we can engage. Let us become people imbued with thoughtfulness and warmth, and savor the joy of benefiting others. Tilling the field of the heart means fostering warmth, compassion, and thoughtfulness. All of these are what Buddhism calls donation, or giving. Donation connotes compassion and thoughtfulness. Thus, giving means taking thought for the happiness of others. Giving tends to be thought of as a one-way street, haves giving to have-nots. But nothing could be further from the truth. Essentially, giving means being privileged to provide something to another. In Buddhism, human beings are seen as basically living in a relationship of mutual giving, a relationship of give and give rather than give and take. The attitude of society in general is that one is better off receiving than giving, so most people try to amass as many possessions and as much money as possible. This is because they are self-centered and always think of their own benefit first. Of course, in a way, this is natural, but the Buddha said, first and foremost, give. Put the welfare of others before your own. Buddhism teaches that one's own true benefit lies in putting the benefit of others first. Giving makes not only the recipient, but also the giver happy. Many people have proved this through their own practice. For example, say there are two apples, one bigger and one smaller, and you and another person have to choose between them. If you put your own benefit first, you will reach for the bigger apple. The other person, seeing this, will probably feel disgruntled. If that feeling intensifies, it can lead to outright conflict. If, however, you put the other person's benefit first, you can be content with leaving the bigger apple for him or her. The sight of the other person's beaming face will make your apple taste all the more delicious. Even more important, sooner or later the other person will feel the urge to yield to someone else. Buddhism teaches that your own benefit and that of others are one and the same. Someone else's happiness makes you happy. This is because giving leads to selflessness and thoughtfulness, that you and the other person are in harmony. We tend to focus solely on our own benefit and our own family's happiness. Wishing for the other's happiness makes for a warm, big-hearted person, and this leads to harmony with others. Kind words and a smile. What exactly, though, do we give? Giving can be broadly divided into three categories. The first is spiritual giving. transmitting the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha Dharma, which is the most precious gift a person can receive. The second is helping others with one's body, such as giving one's seat to an elderly person or helping someone with a heavy load. It also includes taking part in volunteer activities. The third is giving wealth, providing aid to those who are financially hard up, donating money for the public good, and so on, to relieve people from hardship. It is through these three ways of giving that we devote ourselves to others and contribute to their happiness. To those who protest that all this is beyond them, the Buddha teaches that there are things they can give even if they have nothing. Let me tell you about two of them. One is to speak kindly, the other is to interact with others with a smile. Even someone with no material wealth whatsoever can give kind words and a smile. To those who say that interacting with others with a smile is too hard, I recommend practicing smiling in front of a mirror. Even a forced smile makes one feel more cheerful. Whether form or feeling comes first does not really matter. Body and mind are inextricably linked. If you train your body, your mind will become trained too. If your mind is upset, your body will be as well. So, whichever approach you take, form or feeling, both body and mind will follow suit. If we are always cheerful and smiling, and speak with kindness and thoughtfulness, what a soothing effect it will have on our surroundings. It will also make us happy. The joy that arises from giving is profound. It is a selfless joy that unites us with others. The joy of receiving cannot begin to compare. The reason is that everyone is endowed with the same precious wish as the Buddha, the wish to make people happy. There is no greater happiness for a human being than to give others joy and happiness. Nothing can take the place of the joy that springs from the satisfaction of having been able to help others. Nothing can impart greater happiness or joy to bearer. Donation, or giving, is one of the six perfections of Buddhism. Cultivation of the six perfections is regarded as the Bodhisattva practice. A Bodhisattva is one who strives to emulate the Buddha and aspires to be saved, together with everyone else, by working for the happiness of others. The Bodhisattva practice is impossible without a warm heart. At the same time, one can become a warm person through the Bodhisattva practice. Sharing the joys and sorrows of others as if they were one's own, and being unable to ignore the misfortune of others, impelled by the wish to help them somehow. This is the wish of the Bodhisattva. The practice of devoting oneself to the well-being of others and, spurred by this wish, transmitting the truth and the Dharma, is the Bodhisattva practice. Those who are self-centered and enthralled to a relativistic view of things do not know and thus cannot savor the joy of giving. Recognition of the law of transience enables one to begin the quest for harmony with others. Living with compassion. Chapter 16 of the Lotus Sutra, Revelation of the Eternal Life of the Tathagata, ends with these words spoken by the Buddha. How shall I cause all living beings to enter the way supreme and speedily accomplish their Buddhahood? We are always enfolded in the Buddha's great compassion. When we become aware of this great compassion, the vow to live with compassion like the Buddha wells up within us. Compassion is not sympathy or pity. It refers to the Buddha's vow to lead all people to the way of the Buddha and cause them to attain the state of the Buddha. Compassion is when that vow of the Buddha becomes our own vow, which we then transmit to others. Herein lies the true meaning of the Bodhisattva practice. It is very difficult to want to live with the compassion of the Buddha, but if by following the truth in the Dharma, we become able to accept everything that happens to us as the sermon of the Buddha guiding us to the highest way, we can realize that we are indeed living in accordance with the Buddha's vow. When we become aware that we wish not just for our own happiness, but also for the happiness of all those around us, and that we willingly devote ourselves to the happiness of others, a new course opens up before us. In short, compassion means transmitting the truth and the Dharma to others, one by one. This is true human warmth. It is the Buddha's vow within us. Firmly aware of this, let us walk the way of the Buddha. Giving as a way of life. After gaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha rose and set out on his travels to teach the truth in the Dharma that he had realized to others. All his subsequent acts, motivated solely by his awareness of the truth in the Dharma, can be called acts of truth. Their aim was to bring all people to an awareness of the truth and the Dharma. In the teachings of the Buddha are found these words: the gift of the Dharma surpasses all gifts, the taste of the Dharma surpasses all tastes, the pleasure of the Dharma surpasses all pleasures. Any kind of giving is precious, to be sure, but teaching others the Dharma is the greatest gift of all. The taste of the Dharma is superior to that of any delicacy, and the pleasure of savoring the Dharma surpasses all worldly pleasures. Renouncing his life as a prince and leaving behind his wife and child, the Buddha was enlightened to the great Dharma of the cosmos. Thereafter, he continually taught this Dharma to liberate people from suffering. He expressed that state of mind in the following verse from chapter 3 of the Lotus Sutra, a parable. Now this triple world, all is my domain. The living beings in it are all my children. Making the Dharma his daily bread and teaching on his travels his pleasure, the Buddha dedicated his life to giving people the gift of the Dharma. Nichiko Niwano, the founder of Risshō Kōsei Kai, also continually taught the truth in the Dharma, wishing for the happiness of others as had the Buddha. As a result, many people have followed the way of the Buddha, have awakened to what truly makes life worth living, and have been saved. When we think of the Buddha's life, we become aware of the truth and the Dharma and transmit it to others, walking the way of the Buddha together. We then realize that this is what has made our birth as human beings in this world truly worthwhile. In the firm awareness that the Buddha's life was dedicated to spreading the teaching, let us devote ourselves together to following the way of the Buddha. The joy of faith. To yearn to meet the Buddha, sowing the seed of faith in the field of the heart. This is a source of life, the seed of life's greatest happiness. When we till the field of the heart, what seed do we sow there? The most important thing in human life is to sow the seed of happiness. We can also call it the seed of life, or we can call it the spiritual seed, the seed of the innermost human wish. Shakyamuni told the Brahmin Kasidvardvaja, I too plow the soil, sow seed, and obtain food. He also said, faith is the seed. The seed we should sow in the field of the heart to gain true happiness is the seed of faith in the Buddha Dharma. In the Senjisho, the selection of the time, Nichiren wrote, how fortunate, how joyous, to think that with this unworthy body I have received in my heart the seed of Buddhahood. The seed of Buddhahood can also be termed the Buddha knowledge or the Buddha nature. It is, in short, the potential or the seed to become a Buddha. Sowing the seed of Buddhahood within oneself means sowing the seed of faith in the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha used the word seed as a metaphor for faith. We plow the soil of the field of the heart and sow the seed of faith. That seed is the very source of life. The Flower Garland Sutra describes the human condition as follows: making their karma the field of an ego, using the activities of the mind as seed, beclouding the mind by ignorance, fertilizing it with the rain of impure desires, irrigating it by the willfulness of an ego, they add the conception of evil, and carry this incarnation of delusion about with them. Ignorance, impure desires, ego, and the conception of evil, misconstruing right as wrong and vice versa, are sources of delusion. Without realizing it, we accumulate these within ourselves. No doubt, there are other sources of delusion too. Suffice it to say that before encountering the Buddha Dharma, we are a veritable mass of delusions. For this very reason, it is important that we till the field of the heart, expose delusion to the light of wisdom, and sow the seed of correct faith. When self-centered people with no faith in the Buddha Dharma gain great ease, it soon turns to suffering. Whenever they obtain what they want still more, and as a result, they lose a great deal. In responding to Kasidvardvaja's challenge, Shakyamuni ended his verse with these words: thus is this plowing of mind plowed. What one reaps from it is freedom from death. Having plowed this plowing, one is freed from all misery. Freedom from death means transcendence of birth and death, release from all suffering. Because people focus their gaze on what is outside themselves, they tend to believe that poverty, illness, strife, and other sufferings will be alleviated if something external changes. In regard to peace, for example, people focus all their attention on resolving the various outward problems that stand in its way. Until we resolve our own internal problems, however, we cannot resolve external problems. Realization of this, that is, a major transformation of all people, is the priority. To achieve this too, our major task is to sow the seed of faith in the Buddha Dharma in our own field of the heart and nurture it. Meeting the Buddha. Despite seeking that which makes life truly worthwhile, we feel unsatisfied with our daily lives. This is because we have not yet met the one who has sought that which makes life in this world most worthwhile. The Buddha sought that which makes life in this world most worthwhile. Therefore, meeting and emulating the Buddha is the essential condition for tilling the field of the heart and sowing the seed of faith. Of course, we cannot meet the Buddha in the flesh, so we do so through the medium of his teachings. To recognize the truth and the Dharma to which Shakyamuni was enlightened, and live in accordance with them, are to meet and emulate the Buddha. To encounter the truth and the Dharma is to live earnestly and honestly, and to value our encounters with other people. Doing so deepens our awareness of the truth and the Dharma. It is in this way that we can meet the Buddha. For example, one spring day, the wind scatters the petals of the cherry blossoms that have been in such glorious bloom. Surely, we can see and feel the Buddha in this. Sometimes a casual comment by someone we have run into jolts us into taking another look at ourselves. Surely that person is the Buddha, and those words are the teaching of the Buddha. There are many people who live cheerfully, not only in happy times, but also in times of discouragement and suffering, seeing these as trials sent by the Buddha for their benefit. These people, I suspect, have met the Buddha and the Buddha Dharma at a crossroads of life and have been reborn. In Chapter 16, Revelation of the Eternal Life of the Tathagata, the Lotus Sutra teaches that the Buddha is forever here, preaching the law. If we accept that the Buddha is always nearby, preaching the law, we will meet the Buddha every day. Indeed, we are meeting the Buddha here and now. No greater joy than faith. To meet the Buddha, encounter the Buddha Dharma, live earnestly and honestly, and value one's encounters, this is true happiness. According to legend, soon after his birth, Shakyamuni declared, "I was born so that people the world over may find the path to happiness. I save all in heaven and on earth. I bring ease to all." If we can truly understand these words, we will have been able to meet the Buddha. Let us gratefully receive the Buddha's message that in all of heaven and earth, he alone can bring true happiness to all, helping us deepen our faith together and spread that faith far and wide. Meeting the Buddha can be summed up as recognizing the law of transience. This is the greatest aim of birth into this world. It releases us from all problems and enables us to live freely. To encounter the Buddha, recognize the truth and the Dharma, awaken to the preciousness of life, share others' sorrows and suffering, and make their joys our own, transmit the truth and the Dharma to others, so that they may awaken to the blessing of having been granted life. For a person of faith, there can be nothing that makes life more worthwhile. Talk of the truth and the Dharma, and of the law of transience, sounds rather forbidding. But to encounter the truth and the Dharma is to meet the Buddha and his law. It is to take refuge in the Buddha and in the law, and to live in earnest, together with others. Herein are found faith and the essence of tilling the field of the heart.